Hi everyone, I hope you guys are all doing well. So in today's webinar, we're going to see how we can create chase walls. We have three ways that we could create walls potentially in our projects. So we're going to go over each one of these options. And we're also going to see some other stud configurations that we have available within the panel's properties. So it's a very straightforward webinar, but it will give you very useful tips for this type of configurations in your project. So here in my plan view, if I zoom in a little, you're gonna see that this wall type here that I've just added to the project is a chase wall type. So for this one, it's going to call interior LGS chase wall, but this could also be for wood. So I have these three walls that are going to be the same type, and we also have a chase wall here at that location. And we're gonna start by using this one actually to cover the first two options that you could use to create those panels for the chase wall. So first of all, what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and create a panel with my regular template. So I'm just going to refer to the default template and hit set as active, close, and create. So from here, if I zoom in, you're going to see that I do have my regular default template. It's still looking at my 6 inches studs, as you can see. And what I can do from here is go ahead in panels properties and just modify those settings to start generating the correct panel for the chase wall with the correct sizes. So beforehand, what you would like to do also is to just bring in all of your stud types and any family types that you're going to use for your panel. After you've done so, I've already did that here in this project. So after that, you can just go ahead in properties and we're gonna go to miscellaneous tab. And if I scroll down here, you will see structural members option. So we're gonna click on structural members, on edit. And here is where you can see the first option for a chase wall. So in that case, what you're going to do here is just check off this option. So you're gonna leave the arrangement as it is. You can just check off chase wall. And if I just go ahead and click OK, you will see that it will just simply stagger my studs. So for that option, it could be a good one. You could use that option if you have a shared top and bottom tracks and end studs, because all of these elements will remain as one. So as you can see here, I only have one end stud, one bottom track, and same for the top track and the end stud at the other end. So these guys will not be split up. You're gonna have just one just as a regular panel. So the only thing that it's doing right now is just staggering the existing studs. That's all that it's going to do. It's going to take the total width of your wall and it will stagger those studs. So if you'd like to use this option, as you can see, you would have to make sure to select the correct size for your tracks in that case, top and bottom tracks, and even for the end studs as well. So we're going to select the wall and go back to our panels properties. And then I can go ahead here for top and bottom tracks. I could change that to a 12 inches member, which is the width of my total width of my chase wall. So let's say if I select this guy and then this guy here. Sorry, let me check. Let me select the same one. Yeah, there you go. And then from here, I could also, again, if I am modifying the end studs, I could come here to miscellaneous, end studs, override generals. And what I want to do here is just change the stud family type as well, the end stud family type. And this time we would like to use an S member. So let's use this one. and this one. Okay, so let's hit OK. And then as you can see now, it accommodates my staggering. The other thing that to note about this option is that it will keep following your first stud offset and the stud spacing. So in that case, you could still use your benchmarks to rearrange your studs, but they will still be following the stud spacing and they will have that constraint uh, among themselves because they are still just part of one panel. So now I'm going to just go ahead and delete this panel and we're going to try the second option. So let me delete and I'm going to grab the same wall again and we're going to just quick create again with we're going to start from scratch. So let's just go back to our default template, hit create. And this time we're going to again go back to structural members, but instead of using this chase wall option that we used, we're gonna set the arrangement here from normal to chase. So as you can see now, it will override anything else that you might have when it comes to stud arrangement and configuration. This time we are going to create two separate rows of studs and you will be able to control the spacing independently. So in that case, you can specify the stud spacing here. It will just override the regular stud spacing that you have on the studs option here in miscellaneous. So let's say we're going to set it to 2 feet. Here, instead of making the changes in general info like we did before, you can just go ahead in this tab here and say what type of family type you would like to use for the studs. So this is for the overall studs, vertical studs of your panel. So I'm gonna leave it as it is because we do have enough space here. So I'm just going to use the 6 inches one, but you could change for something else if that's the case. And then here we have the option to assign a benchmark. And this is what it will control in that case, where how the studs will be arranged. And each row can be associated, as you can see, to a specific benchmark, which means that you have that control for the stud arrangement for each row separately. And then you have the justification, which will also allow you to set one row flush with the interior side of your structural layer, and the other one will be flush with the interior side of your structural layer. So it will be already by default set up unless you would like to switch it for some reason, but by default it should be already set up. And the flip option will be available only for LGS, so light gauge steel. This will flip one of the rows, so in case you want to rotate the studs 180 degrees, so you have the open side facing the opposite side of the panel direction. So for now, what I'm going to do here is just move back to normal. And we want to add the benchmarks so we can have the panel associated to them. So we can come here to markers and we can say we would like to assign the benchmarks by selecting points in your project. You could also use other methods, that's not a problem. And we're going to use the default, which is just the default point benchmark. I'm going to add here a prefix. So we could call this chase 1. Sorry, chase. And then initial sequence number will be 1. And you could have a reference plane or model lines to refer the correct location for those benchmarks. But let's say I'm going to have one here and the other one will be somewhere here. So these two benchmarks will control how my studs are being arranged. So I'm going to go back here. Let me just check their names. So this guy is chase 1 and this one is chase 2, which means that once we change the arrangement, therefore, to use a chase option, We're going to associate one row with chase 1 and the other row of studs will be associated with chase number 2. Now we're going to go back to properties and I'm going to again go back to structural members and change it from normal to chase and setting this up to 2 feet for the stud spacing for both rows of studs. And then again, as you can see, this time you can actually modify and have specific spacing for each set of rows that you're going to have. So in that case, they're not going to be connected when it comes to the stud spacing. It's still just one panel, but you can control that spacing separately. For the stud type, again, I'm going to just leave it as it is with the 6 inches studs. And the benchmark, as you can see here by default, it's already associated to one of them. So let's just go here to the exterior side and associate that one to chase 2. And now here for the justification, as I mentioned, it's already set up unless you would like to change it for some reason. And let's say we're going to flip the exterior side. So once we hit OK here, you will notice that right now that staggering, it's being controlled by the benchmarks. So the stud spacing now, if you try to measure, it should be from one set of studs to the other. So 2, 2, and 2. These are my stud. This is my stud spacing. So they are separate. One row is separate from the other. And the staggering between them, it's being controlled by how you place and where the the benchmarks are. Which means that because they are already associated, if you move one of them, you will be moving and modifying that staggering. So let's say if I move it a little bit, now if I go ahead and regenerate these panels, well, actually it's just one panel, so this panel. You see how it also moved my stud as well? Let's say if I move, so this one, this exterior side here, let me check if this is the exterior side of the wall. Yes. So the exterior side is set up to follow the chase number 2, right? So the benchmark chase number 2. So that's why when I moved it, this set of studs, they moved it as well. Now if I go ahead and move this one, and I regenerate the panel again, you will see that now the row of studs that I see here on my right will move, and the other one will remain as it is, the one on the left. Again, we have the same situation, the same issue with top and bottom tracks and the end studs. So for that condition, again, what you can do is just go back to properties and modify just like we did on the top and bottom tracks. You would change that again to a 12 inches member. And same for the end studs. We could go here and override generals and again change this to be a 12 inches stud. Okay, so that would be the second option. As you can see, you have a little bit more control. You can control the staggering. You can address the spacing separately as well from one row of studs to the other. It's still you're gonna have one track, one top and bottom track and one set of end studs. If you, let's say, place an opening here, so let's say if I place a door. So in that case, if I regenerate the panel, you will see that for kings, jacks, it will be the same situation. You're gonna have just one. So in that case, you can address that in your opening markers if you'd like, or even in the, if you're not using opening markers, you could modify the families in the opening framing tab here. So in that case, you would turn on the options here and just override the check and king families. So you can assign a 12 inches stud as well for these members. And same thing goes for header and seal. So you have to make sure to also modify the headers and the seals. Okay? But as you can see for the cripples, it will follow the vertical studs as well. So it will be also staggering the cripples. So those are the two options that are completely within MWF. But as you can see, it shows as one panel. So this is always one panel. You're gonna do the chase wall with it, but just by using one panel, just creating one MWF panel. Now for the third option, let's use these guys here for the third option. And then we can also talk about a little bit what to do if you do have joins. You probably will have. So in that case, here I have a simple panel, and I'm not gonna have any chase wall element in here. It's just a regular panel. And as you can see, I already have a join applied to it. The condition of this join, if let's say if I reproduce here on this side, so if I take these three walls and I go here to joins, just so I can show you the preview. So that's the join that is being used on that location. So in that case, you could use a join, is not a problem, because in the end you're going to have this panel going through, and then the chase wall panels will be stopping where they should be stopping. Sometimes if you, let's say if it's a 90 degrees corner, an L angle corner, maybe it's not going to work as great with joins. So in that case, what you can do is just disallow join and address this separately. You can just disallow with Revit and drag it back to where you need it to stop. That way it's a little easier for you to manipulate that chase wall separately from the other regular panels. So you can do that as well in case joins are not really working for you, you can do that. Okay, so for the third option, we are actually going to create two separate panels. And then in this case, I'm going to use smaller members. So we're going to, for the creation now, we're just going to assign the regular default template, but we are going to modify the sizes this time for that example. So what we want to do here is go ahead and already change this to 4 inches member, let's say. So 4 inches, and for the tracks, we're gonna do the same, 4 inches. And again, in case we do have openings, we want to make sure to modify the opening framing tab as well, at least the header and the sills. So in that case, they are going to be also 4 inches members. And let me see here, 4 inches, this one. And then for the sill, 4 inches as well. Hit close and apply. Let me just quickly hit OK. So right now, this is what it's looking. So we want to go back to our properties and modify the justification. So in the options that we used there, the second option that we used in miscellaneous in structural members, the justification is already set up. So it was already set up in here. Now, because we're doing this manually, we need to set up the justification for the overall panel because we are going to create two separate panels. So in that case, I'm going to set this one up to the structural face exterior. And again, if I click OK, I can check what it would look like. So it's going to be here flush with the exterior side of the wall. And let's say if I would like to create a template for that, just so I don't have to keep doing this and creating and changing the families every single time I have a chase wall. So I could potentially just save a template from here. I could come here to properties, go to template. Let's say we're going to save in the default folder, save as, and we're going to say this guy will be my chase wall 1 12 inches template. Or we could do, this would be the exterior side, so we can add exterior side, let's say. So whatever nomenclature you would think it's useful, you can use it. So that would be my template, and we can just go ahead and close this dialog box. So we have the first panel. Now again, we're going to select the same wall. We're going to hit create. If I just go ahead and hit create, it will just grab the last settings I was using, which means that I don't have to change the families like all over again. It will pick up the families, the last template that I was using actually. The only thing that we need to do here is to set up the justification to, instead of exterior, to be interior this time. So if I hit OK here, you will see that now I have another panel that is flush with the interior side of my wall. Now, this is where you have to be very careful because as you can see, if we zoom in, the labels are overlapping. So what you could do from here is, let's figure out which one this is. So this is panel 322. So the other label 321 belongs to the opposite panel here that I have on my left. So what you can do from here is you can go to that panel's properties and you can just flip the label. And then you can save that to your template as well. So you can have the label already by default flipped to the exterior side. That wall usually will create a flush with the exterior side of your wall, so the label will be already at the correct side. That's one thing. The other thing that it's important to be careful is that now that we have two panels in one wall, if I simply select the wall and I go to properties, I am actually selecting the two panels. So I have 321 and 322 here selected. If I want to make a change to both of them, that's great. You just have to make sure to check off all panels. If it's a partial change, don't forget to check off partial change. But if it's something regarding a specific panel, then it is better to just make sure to select one of the members of the panel and not the wall. So you don't get confused in which panel is which and for which panel you are assigning that change. So in that case, you could maybe select and refer to the labels or maybe just a stud and so on. And just like the chase option that we have here, you could also associate these guys to your chase, to your benchmarks. So if that's the case, you could select both of them, come here to, oops, sorry, I'm gonna have to do this separately. Let's select panel 322 first. And we're gonna go here to members. The only difference is that you have to do it separately. So from stud arrangement this time, we are going to change this to benchmark. And now if I go here to my benchmark tab, I'm going to say that that panel will be associated to chase number 1. So I can go ahead and hit close. For the stud spacing, it will be following the regular stud spacing. So if I like to change that, it's just a regular panel. I can just go ahead here in properties and modify the stud spacing here. But for the arrangement itself, now it's associated to my chase 1. And then if I do the same for my panel 321, if I select one of the members, go here to properties, and this time miscellaneous again, structural members. And now here under stud arrangements, we are going to change that to benchmark. And here in the benchmark tab, for this one, for that panel, we're going to associate that with Chase 2 benchmark. So we're gonna just select and hit OK. There you go. So now I can control that staggering. If I don't like, if I would not like to have a staggering, I can simply just not use the benchmark, or I could have them at the same location. So that will mean that it will just follow the first stud spacing and the regular stud spacing throughout, and you are not gonna have that staggering happening. So the other thing that we want to do for this one, that we already have a template, we want to update that template now because we have that association with the benchmark. So for this template here that we already have, we're just going to go ahead here to template and say that I would like to update this template here. And then we can just set it active just in case, just to check if everything's okay, and hit OK. Perfect. Now for this one, we still don't have a template. So let's just go ahead and go back here to properties. Let's check if everything is good. Everything's okay. It is looking at my benchmark number 1. That's all good. So we're gonna come here to template. And this time we're going to create a second template for chase wall. So I'm gonna call it chase wall. This will be for the interior side of the wall, 12 inches, for example. Hit OK. Set as active, close, and OK. So that's it. Now we have our two panels. As you can see, these two are completely separate panels, so you can modify them separately. In case you do have openings, in that case, you're gonna have two, again, it's gonna be two completely separate panels. So it's pretty much the same as drawing two separate walls here. So you're gonna have separate header seals. You're gonna have double cripples here as well, and so on. You're gonna have two kings and two jacks on each side. So it really depends on the configuration you need for your specific project, but you have those two options. And now that we have the templates, if I go ahead and select, let's say, this wall, and I just go here to create, now I can refer to one of my templates, set as active, hit create. And now again, same wall, I'm gonna hit create again. Template, chase wall interior, set as active, close, and OK. And then I have again, it's still, again, they are looking at the benchmark. So it is still following the same arrangement, as you can see. So that's why the staggering is exactly the same. And it overrides the first stud spacing actually, because it is looking at the arrangement for the benchmarks. So it will follow your specific stud spacing, but for the arrangement, it will always follow the benchmarks. The other thing to note is that in that case, if you're using the chase, that third option to create chase walls, you will see that it can't really be used with quick rate, because you can't really create twice for one wall. You would have to have two maps. So you could potentially use it, but then you would have to have two maps and run the quick create twice on that wall. Okay, so these are the three options we have available to create chase walls. And now let's take a look at the stud arrangements. And for this one, I'm just going to select the regular panel. So for any panel that you generate, we do have this option. It's again within structural members, and this second tab here called stud configuration. And if you look at the pull down, you will notice that we have other configurations other than just the normal, which is just a single stud. So you can have double studs, and that's in case you need to do that for the entire panel. If it's just an instance, you can just go ahead and modify that specific location. Maybe use extra verticals, or you can use the extra verticals marker to modify that. But for the overall panel, if you change in stud configuration, you would have that for the entire panel. So right now I'm duplicating all of my studs. So all of the studs will be double. So that's one option. And this is also available for wood. Now, if I go back here and, oops, sorry, stud configuration, I could also have it triple. So in this case, instead of two studs, it will be three studs. So it's going to be following your stud spacing, you're going to have a set of three studs throughout your panel. So this also works for wood. And then we have some configurations that are just for light gauge, which would be back to back. So in that case, they're going to be rotated and will be back to back. And we have, if I go back here to stud configuration, we also have face to face, which is the opposite, open face with open face, and interlock. But for the interlock, you would need a specific family, right? Because they're going to be interlocking each other. They would need a specific family for that. It wouldn't work with the regular family that I have right now. So let's say we try face to face. And then they're going to be all boxed studs in your panel. So this will change again only the infill studs, so the vertical studs, it's not going to change the end studs. In that case, you have to make the change within the end studs option. And for openings too, the configurations for the openings will be within the markers. So this is just to change the arrangement and configuration for the infill studs. So that's it for today. I hope that this was helpful, and if you guys have any questions, we can address them and get back to you with a reply. I hope you all have a nice day and see you guys soon.